The Awakening Protocol. The first sign of invasion came not as ships in the sky, but as silence. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching as communication arrays across the solar system went dark one by one. Mars Colony, Jupiter Mining Facility, the Outer Rim stations, all falling silent in perfect sequence. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of our system," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. 67 vessels, each one the size of Manhattan. They're not responding to any of our hails. Sarah gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white. In her 15 years of military service, she had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality. Earth's population of 8 billion souls depended on decisions made in the next few hours. "Send the evacuation protocols to all civilian sectors," she ordered, "and get me Director Harrison on Priority Channel 1. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the weathered face of James Harrison, head of Earth's Defense Council. Behind him, Sarah could see the chaos of the emergency command bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. "Sarah, tell me you have good news," Harrison said, though his expression suggested he expected none. "Sir, we're looking at a full-scale invasion. Unknown alien force, technology far beyond anything we've encountered. Our deep space monitoring stations went dark before they could send detailed scans." Harrison's jaw tightened. "How long do we have?" "Based on their current trajectory, and assuming they maintain present velocity, approximately 18 hours before they reach Earth orbit." The weight of those words settled between them like a stone. 18 hours to prepare for a war they couldn't win, against an enemy they didn't understand. Meanwhile, 6,000 miles away, Dr. Marcus Webb was having the strangest day of his archaeological career. The excavation site in the Sahara had been routine until 3 hours ago, when his team's ground-penetrating radar revealed structures that shouldn't exist. The ruins they had uncovered were impossibly old, yet constructed with a precision that made modern engineering look primitive. "Dr. Webb, you need to see this," called out his assistant, Kira Vasquez, from the main excavation pit. Her voice carried an excitement that made Marcus abandon his coffee and hurry down the rope ladder. What he saw took his breath away. The chamber they had opened was vast, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change in the light. But at the center of the room sat something that defied explanation. A crystalline structure the size of a small car, perfectly preserved and emanating a soft, pulsing glow. "Has it been doing that the whole time?" Marcus asked, approaching the crystal cautiously. "No, sir. It started glowing about 10 minutes ago, right around the time those military jets started flying overhead." Marcus extended his hand toward the crystal, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion. The moment his fingers made contact with its surface, the world exploded into light and sound. Images flooded his mind. Vast fleets of ships traveling between stars, beams that looked remarkably human standing before councils of alien species, and everywhere, the same crystalline structures serving as beacons of communication across impossible distances. But most shocking of all were the final images. Earth as it had been millions of years ago, populated by an advanced human civilization that had spread across the galaxy before vanishing into myth and legend. "Dr. Webb." Kira's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Dr. Webb, are you all right?" Marcus opened eyes he didn't remember closing, finding himself on his knees before the crystal. The artifact's glow had intensified, and now he could hear something. A low, thrumming sound that seemed to resonate in his bones. "Kira, we need to contact every government and military authority we can reach," he said, struggling to his feet. "This isn't just an archaeological find. This is a weapon, or maybe something even more important." Above them, unknown to the archaeological team, the first wave of alien reconnaissance probes was entering Earth's atmosphere. The Zelthrian Empire had spent decades preparing for this invasion, studying human technology and society through long-range observation. To Admiral Zektar, Commanding the invasion fleet from his flagship, humans appeared to be a young, primitive species ripe for conquest. Begin preliminary strikes on their military installations, he ordered his bridge crew. Focus on their orbital defenses first, then their planetary command centers. Standard occupation protocol: eliminate resistance, preserve infrastructure, catalog useful resources. But as the first Zelthrian attack ships moved into position, something unexpected happened. The lead squadron's instruments began registering massive energy spikes from the planet's surface, specifically from a region in North Africa that their scans had shown as empty desert. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting an unknown energy signature. It appears to be some form of transmission." "From where?" "Sir, it seems to be coming from beneath the planet's surface. Multiple locations are now showing similar readings." Zektar frowned. Their intelligence had been thorough. Humans possessed no technology capable of generating energy readings like this. Maintain course. Whatever primitive weapon they're attempting to activate, it cannot threaten ships of the Imperial fleet. He would soon learn how wrong he was. Back in the Sahara excavation site, the crystal had begun to sing. There was no other word for the complex harmonies that filled the ancient chamber, sounds that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. More crystals were awakening throughout the chamber, their combined glow bright enough to illuminate hieroglyphs and symbols that covered every surface. Kira worked frantically with her translation software, feeding the symbols into every linguistic database available. "Dr. Webb, I'm getting partial translations. This appears to be some kind of historical record. It mentions something called the Guardians and a long sleep." Marcus nodded, still processing the visions the crystal had shared with him. "Kira, I think we found evidence of an ancient human civilization. These aren't alien ruins, they're ours. Our ancestors built this place." "But that's impossible. Human civilization is only a few thousand years old." "Not this human civilization. I think we're looking at the remains of humanity's first attempt at spacefaring civilization. And I think," he paused, watching as the crystal's glow pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, "I think they left us a message." The crystal's song grew louder, and suddenly Marcus understood. The visions hadn't been random. They were instructions. His ancient ancestors had faced threats from aggressive alien species before, and they had developed methods of dealing with them. Methods that didn't rely on conventional weapons or military might. "We need to get this information to the military immediately," he said, but even as he spoke, he realized it might already be too late. Through the chamber's entrance, he could see the night sky lit up with streaks of light. Enemy ships entering the atmosphere. In orbit, Admiral Zektar was beginning to understand that something was very wrong. 3 of his reconnaissance squadrons had gone silent, their ships simply vanishing from sensors without any distress signals. The energy readings from the planet's surface were growing stronger, and now his own instruments were beginning to malfunction. "Admiral, we're losing navigation systems on decks 7 through 12, reported his chief engineer. "The interference is unlike anything in our databases. Increase power to the shields. All ships maintain defensive formations." But even as he gave the orders, Zektar could see the fear in his crew's eyes. The Zelthrian Empire had conquered 47 star systems over the past 3 centuries. They had never encountered resistance like this, resistance that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. On Earth, Captain Sarah Chen received the most impossible report of her career. "Ma'am, the alien ships they're shutting down. One by one, their power signatures are going dark. Are we doing that? Is there some kind of defensive system we didn't know about?" "Negative, Captain. The energy signatures are coming from archaeological sites around the globe. Ancient ruins that have been dormant for millennia are suddenly becoming active." Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching as red dots representing enemy ships winked out of existence one by one. "Get me Dr. Webb from the Sahara excavation. I think he might have some answers." In the crystal chamber, Marcus felt the awakening like electricity in his veins. Around the world, humans were beginning to remember what they had forgotten. The genetic locks placed by their ancestors were opening, dormant neural pathways were activating, and for the first time in millions of years, humanity was becoming what it had always been meant to be. The crystal's song reached a crescendo, and Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond the confines of his physical body. He could sense every human on Earth, could feel their confusion and wonder as ancient memories began to surface. But more importantly, he could sense the alien fleet above, could feel their fear and confusion as their technology failed them in ways they couldn't comprehend. "The long sleep is ending," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if the words came from his mouth or directly from his mind. The Guardians return. In space, Admiral Zektar watched his mighty invasion fleet transform into floating debris. Ship after ship lost power, their crews trapped in vessels that no longer responded to their commands. The primitive planet they had come to conquer was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As his own flagship began to lose power, Zektar realized with growing horror that they hadn't stumbled upon a young, primitive species. They had awakened something ancient, something that had been waiting in the darkness between stars for precisely this moment. The humans weren't the prey in this scenario. They were the predators, and they had been sleeping for a very long time. The judge's return. The signal that emanated from Earth traveled faster than light, carried by quantum frequencies that transcended normal spacetime. Within hours, it reached every corner of the galaxy, and ancient civilizations that had hidden in the shadows for millennia felt a collective chill of recognition. On the water world of Aquinas Prime, the Cetacean Council emerged from their deepest ocean trenches for the first time in 10,000 years. The song has returned. Their eldest member communicated through bioluminescent patterns. The Guardians wake from their long sleep. In the crystalline caves of Sirion, the silicon-based architects ceased their eternal construction projects and turned their photonic eyes toward the distant spiral arm where Sol burned. They remember, they whispered through harmonic resonances. The children of Terra remember what they were. But nowhere was the reaction more dramatic than in the hidden fortress worlds of the Zelthrian Empire. Emperor Thacus, supreme ruler of 47 conquered systems, received the news with disbelief that quickly transformed into terror. "You're telling me that our invasion fleet has been completely neutralized by humans?" His voice echoed through the obsidian throne room, causing several courtiers to step backward. "Yes, Your Supremacy," replied General Morgak, his scaled hide pale with fear. Admiral Zektar's final transmission spoke of impossible technologies, of ships losing power without being attacked, of crew members simply disappearing. Emperor Thacus rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "Humans are a primitive species. Our intelligence reports confirmed this. How is such a thing possible?" "Your Supremacy," ventured the court historian, "an ancient being whose species had served the Zelthrian Empire since its founding. There are legends. Old stories speak of a species that once policed the galaxy, beings who could disable entire fleets with a thought. They were called many names, but the most common translation was Guardians. Legends, scoffed the Emperor. Ideal and facts, not stories. With respect, Your Supremacy, perhaps it is time to consider that our facts were incomplete." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb stood before an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. The crystal chamber had become a hub of activity, with scientists, military personnel, and government officials from every major nation attempting to understand what was happening to their planet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, "what I'm about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. The archaeological evidence is clear. Our species is far older than we believed. Millions of years ago, humanity achieved interstellar travel and established a galactic civilization." Director Harrison leaned forward. "You're suggesting that ancient humans traveled to other worlds?" "Not just traveled, Director. They governed. The species we call modern humanity are the descendants of a galactic peacekeeping force. We were designed to be arbiters, judges of interstellar conflicts. When the galaxy became too peaceful to require our services, we entered what can only be described as a planned hibernation. Captain Sarah Chen, attending the meeting via holographic projection, spoke up. Dr. Webb, are you saying that the abilities we're seeing manifest in people around the world, the telepathic communications, the technological manipulation, these are normal human capabilities? Not normal for modern humans, Captain, but absolutely normal for our ancestors. The genetic locks that kept these abilities dormant have been removed by the crystal network. We're remembering what we were always meant to be. As if to demonstrate his point, Marcus extended his consciousness and made contact with the crippled Zelthrian fleet still trapped in Earth's orbit. In the flagship, Admiral Zektar felt an alien presence enter his mind, not with violence or conquest, but with the terrible weight of absolute authority. Admiral Zektar of the Zelthrian Empire. Marcus's voice resonated directly in the alien commander's thoughts. You stand accused of crimes against sapient species across 47 star systems. How do you answer these charges? Zektar's mandibles clicked in confusion and fear. Who are you? What are you? We are what your species has forgotten. We are the voice of justice in the void between stars. We are the guardians, and our long sleep is ended. Around the world, similar conversations were taking place as newly awakened humans made contact with the crews of the disabled invasion fleet. But these weren't interrogations in any conventional sense. The humans were reading the aliens' memories directly, cataloging centuries of conquest, slavery, and genocide with the dispassionate efficiency of cosmic accountants. Kira Vasquez, working alongside Marcus in the crystal chamber, had become something of a liaison between the awakening human collective and the traditional governments of Earth. The process is accelerating, she reported to the Security Council. We now have confirmed contact with over 3,000 Zelthrian crew members. The charges against their empire are extensive. What kind of charges? Asked the Secretary General. Kira consulted her notes, though she hardly needed them. The information was flowing directly into her enhanced consciousness. Genocide of the Altarian species, enslavement of the Rigel colonies, destruction of the vegan homeworld, forced relocation of the Centauri populations. The list goes on for hundreds of pages. Director Harrison rubbed his temples. This is insane. 24 hours ago, we were facing an alien invasion. Now we're apparently conducting war crimes tribunals for half the galaxy. Not conducting, Director, Marcus corrected gently. We've already reached our verdicts. In space, Admiral Zektar felt the change the moment the judgment was rendered. The human presence in his mind shifted from investigator to something far more terrible, executioner. But the sentence wasn't death. It was something the Zelthrian Empire had never experienced in their long history of conquest. Exile. Every Zelthrian ship in the fleet suddenly found its navigation systems rewritten, its destination locked to coordinates at the very edge of the galaxy. They would be permitted to live, but they would spend the remainder of their existence in the empty void between galaxies, cut off from the civilizations they had terrorized for so long. You cannot do this, Zektar projected desperately. We are a proud warrior race. We have the right to. You have no rights. Marcus's mental voice cut through his protests like a blade. Rights are earned through respect for others. You forfeited yours the first time you chose conquest over cooperation. But even as the immediate threat of the Zelthrian fleet was neutralized, Earth's awakening humans were discovering the true scope of their responsibilities. The galaxy was filled with aggressive species, territorial disputes, and brewing conflicts that had been held in check only by rumors and half-remembered legends of the Guardians. Captain Sarah Chen, her own consciousness expanding as dormant neural pathways activated, found herself in mental contact with distress signals from dozens of star systems. "My God," she whispered, standing in the Luna Station command center. "We can hear everything. Every conflict, every cry for help, every act of aggression across the entire galaxy." Director Harrison, observing from the command bunker, noticed that Sarah's eyes had begun to glow with the same soft light as the crystals. "Captain, are you still? You?" Sarah turned to him, and for a moment he saw something vast and ancient looking out from behind her familiar features. "I'm more me than I've ever been, Director." "We all are. We're remembering our purpose." The transformation wasn't limited to those directly exposed to the crystals. Across Earth, millions of humans were experiencing the awakening as dormant genetic sequences activated in response to the quantum field generated by the crystal network. Children were the most affected, their young minds more adaptable to the expanding consciousness. In schools around the world, teachers watched in amazement as students began demonstrating abilities that defied conventional understanding. A classroom in Tokyo found they could communicate telepathically across language barriers. Students in Sao Paulo discovered they could interface directly with computer systems. Children in Cairo began solving mathematical problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. But perhaps the most significant change was happening to those humans who had always felt different, who had struggled with their place in the world. These individuals found that their supposed disabilities were actually latent guardian abilities, struggling to manifest in a species that had forgotten its true nature. Dr. James Okafor, a researcher in neurodiversity at Oxford, was among the first to understand what was happening. "We've been calling them learning disabilities," he explained to a hastily convened panel of experts. "But autism, ADHD, synesthesia, these are all expressions of guardian neural architecture, trying to function in brains designed for dormancy." The revelation recontextualized human neurodiversity as evolutionary preparation for the species' true calling. Those who had struggled most in conventional society were often the first to master the new abilities, their brains already wired for the multidimensional thinking required of galactic arbiters. Emperor Thachus received the news of his invasion fleet's fate with a rage that shook the foundations of his fortress world. "Prepare the reserve fleets," he commanded. "If these humans wish to play at being galactic powers, we shall give them a war they will not forget." But his military advisors were less enthusiastic about the prospect. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Species that had remained hidden for millennia were emerging to pledge allegiance to the returning guardians. The ancient alliance that had once maintained galactic peace was reforming, and the Zelthrian Empire suddenly found itself facing not just humanity, but a coalition of civilizations they had thought extinct. "Your Supremacy," General Morgak said carefully, "perhaps we should consider diplomatic solutions. The humans have shown restraint so far. Our invasion fleet was neutralized, not destroyed." Restraint. Thachus's roar echoed through the chamber. "They have exiled our finest warriors to the void. They have humiliated the Empire before all the galaxy. Yes, your supremacy, but they could have simply destroyed us. The fact that they chose exile suggests they preferred justice to vengeance." As if summoned by their conversation, a new presence entered the throne room. Not physically. No alarms were triggered, no guards alerted, but every being in the chamber suddenly felt an additional consciousness among them, vast and ancient and utterly implacable. Marcus Webb's voice echoed from the air itself, carrying the authority of the awakened guardian collective. "Emperor Thachus of the Zelthrian Empire, you are hereby summoned to answer for crimes against sapient life committed over the past 3 centuries. You may surrender yourself for judgment, or judgment will come to you." Thachus drew himself up to his full imposing height. "I am Emperor of 47 worlds. I bow to no one." "You are ruler of nothing," came the reply. "Your empire's crimes have been catalogued. Your victims have been consulted. The verdict has been reached. You have 1 standard galactic hour to surrender yourself, or we will come for you." The presence withdrew, leaving the throne room in stunned silence. General Morgak was the first to speak. "Your Supremacy, I recommend we consider their terms." "Never." Thachus slammed his massive fist against his throne, cracking the obsidian surface. "Ready all fleets. If they want war, we shall give them war." But even as he gave the orders, Thachus felt a chill of premonition. The humans had neutralized his most powerful fleet without firing a shot. What would they do when truly provoked? On Earth, the Crystal Network pulsed with new harmonies as the Guardian Collective processed the Emperor's refusal. Marcus, now serving as something between a prophet and a communications officer for the awakening species, felt the weight of judicial authority settling around him like a mantle. The Zelthrian Empire has chosen conflict over justice, he announced to the assembled leaders of Earth. The galaxy watches to see how the Guardians will respond. Captain Sarah Chen, her transformation now complete, stepped forward. Her eyes held the light of distant stars, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of cosmic law. Then let the galaxy see that justice, long delayed, is not justice denied. The Guardians return, and the age of conquest is ended. In the depths of space, ancient machines that had slumbered for millions of years began to stir. The Guardians were awakening not just on Earth, but throughout the galaxy, and they brought with them technologies and powers that made conventional warfare seem like children playing with sticks. The Zelthrian Empire had wanted war. They were about to discover that some wars are not meant to be won, but to teach lessons that echo across eternity. The silence between stars was ending, and in its place came the sound of justice, returning to a galaxy that had forgotten its voice.